Good afternoon, Shane at DIY Retro Arcade. Today I'm going to show you how to install our Raspberry Pi 4B full install kit. These are your components. So let's start with the power supply. We'll get this set up first and then we'll assemble the control deck. So let's take everything that we need for the power supply, which will be these parts right here in the center. And actually we won't really need all these right now. The only thing we need to hook up first is I'm going to assemble the power supply out here. That way I can actually show you what's going on. It'll be a little bit better. So the first thing we need to do is take your EMI kit, your EMI cable, and take your power supply. And let me loosen all this up real quick. Not preparing before the video. So this cable will hook to the ground, neutral, and line. So what we'll do first is we'll take this cable. You'll take the EMI filter. This right here will mount to the back of the arcade cabinet itself. And this is your neutral side, no sticker. This is your line side with the sticker. And the bottom side is your ground. That's important here in a minute. Wire color typically doesn't matter, but I always tell people to put the yellow and green on the bottom for the ground because that's usually that color. Let's use the blue for the neutral, and let's use the brown for the line. You have to match it exactly to the power supply. That's the most important thing. So let's hook in the yellow-green. Again is your ground. So let's screw that one in. And then again, this is your neutral, blue wire. So hook it in there. Whoop. And then let's take the line, which is the only wire you have left, the brown, and put it underneath the L on the power supply for line. And that is ready to go. You're also going to want to have a 5-volt out and a 12-volt out. The 5-volt out will be used for your actual Raspberry Pi. Your 12-volt will be used for the amp, marquee, LED buttons, whatever else you want to use it for. So you'll have 2 of these cables in the kit. Take the first one. And let's hook up the 5-volt. Take the red wire and put it under the +5, which is the first terminal. And set and put the black wire under the ground. And then tighten those up. And this will now give you a 5-volt out. Now let's hook up the 12-volt one. Again, take the same pigtail. Put the black under the ground. hook the red underneath the one that says plus 12. Which is that one. And your power supply is now 100% hooked up. So I'm going to take this and then go set it inside the cab, and then we'll start working on the control deck. We're going to use these cables at a later time. These will hook to the power supply to the 12 volt and 5 volt out. Once we get to the install portion over there at the actual machine, then I'll basically pull these back out. And today we're going to be installing the control panel on a Terminator 2 Arcade 1-Up. The first thing I would always suggest to do is install the encoders. The reason that I tell people to do that is because you have leverage you can push down while it's flat, and that's the first thing you want to do. Also take and go ahead and put your holes in the panel for the joystick. That's also very important. It makes it a whole lot easier. So let's install the encoder boards, which I actually don't have laying out here. Let me grab two of these real quick. Oddly enough, they are right behind me on the shelf. Okay, back with the encoders. So take your PCB feet and take your screws. Should we leave these right here? And let's attach the PCB feet. I always take them and just kind of set them where they're loose. Sometimes they turn on easy and sometimes they don't. Oop, what am I doing? You want to position these as close as you can to the joystick typically, because that cable is the shortest. So this cable, I mean this panel actually has a lot of options because it's so wide. Most of the arcades aren't that nice. So what we're going to do is make sure that you don't go too far over to hit your joystick. You can kind of set that in right there and see where that's going to go. So anywhere up there I'm going to clear. So, and you also don't go too far this way, because if so, then you will hit the side of the panel. I always say don't cross the last button. And the good thing is, with if you're using earth control panels, they're made out of plywood, and you don't have to pre-drill anything. You can just push down on them and screw right into them fairly easily. It's not like the Melanie that's on the Arcade 1-Up. That stuff, it just crumbles and cracks. Horrible. And once you do that, you can kind of snug these up here so they point the right direction. Make sure you tighten these up on this side as well. You don't have to go crazy. And then I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to attach this side. Okay, we got this side installed and it's ready to go. Again, make sure that you take the 5-pin and point it towards the joystick, because these cables are short, so they only run so far. Next thing you're going to install is the buttons. So let's get those done real quick. I'm going to install one side just like I did on the other. Nobody wants to watch me put buttons in. It's pretty straightforward. So stick the buttons in, and I'm going to pause the video because again this is self-explanatory. That way I'm not tying up 5 minutes of time. And we have all the buttons installed. Something that I would suggest also picking up is one of these nut wrenches. These things are like $3 or so, and it makes the install a whole lot easier to install these buttons versus using a pair of pliers. So let's go on next to the joysticks. I always use like a box or something. It makes it a little bit easier. You set it up. I always use 2 boxes. Just like that. And again, make sure you have the holes pre-drilled, or not pre-drilled. I always just put a black mark in there and use the screw and run it in and then back it back out. You don't have to pre-drill it, but mark them and run the screw through, because it's really hard to push down once you get the joystick through. And it also helps to being able to be lined up, and this looks better. We always just use 2 screws. I've never had the joystick come loose in these panels. The most important thing on this is to make sure that get in on the video here. Make sure that the little square connectors are on the tops. I always position the same. And same with the buttons. You don't have to make it look nice and neat like this, but it's best because I'm OCD and I will look down on you if you don't do it. Okay, all set there. So let's start hooking in the buttons next. For this install for the software, we're going to use Batocera. So these directions will be for that. The way that most set up Batocera button wise is BARYXL, and that will do you good for most of the fighting games. So make sure that when you do that, on the back side it's going to be mirrored. So make sure you're paying attention to again to where it should be. I already have these labeled. This is your player 1, this is your player 2, and it doesn't even really matter. The most important thing, and again listen, your encoder has to be hooked up identical. So this one, the wiring for the buttons has to be the same on both sides. It's very, very, very important. If not, it's not going to work. And if you're using one of our SD cards, this is how it'll be laid out. And we'll have this image on the website. So let's go along here. And what we're going to use is all these on the bottom are all for buttons that have no function assigned to them. So these are the ones that you're going to want to use. It's the 1 through 12, and you'll start the red lead. So we'll start right here, B Y A X R L, and then start and select, and we'll go straight across and use this first little section. So let's do that first. So let's take the encoder wires, and on the buttons you only have 2 plugs. It doesn't matter which one gets the black or the red. It's all the same. It's just closing the loop is all you're doing. So again, your first connection is going to be B, and that will hook here. I always keep them the same. Again, it doesn't matter, but it just looks nicer in my opinion. So there's your B. Then your next one is going to be the Y. And then A, which will be here. My eyes are absolutely horrible, so work with me here. Again, make sure you put them exactly where it's labeled at on the diagram. The next one is X. Followed by R. And last but not least, the L. Okay, and then you have start and select. Most of your arcades will have a start and a coin button usually. Start button will be start, player 1, same thing. Player 1, start, all the same. And then your select button will be select or coin. Either one, that's where it needs to be hooked into on your control panel. So select is the coin. So starts are on the outside, coins are in the center, aka select. So starts on the outside. Select is on selecting or coin, whatever you want to call it, however it's labeled. We'll set it up in the software, but that's the button we're going to use. Okay. And that is all set up. The joystick is the easiest. If your cable is in a bunch of 2, just split it apart. And again, this is what I'm saying about them being short. You don't have a lot of excess space here. That was almost too far. And plug that in right there. And this side is now hooked up. Now again, I'm going to flip the video off. But again, this side needs to be identical to this side. So both of these have to match the exact same button hookup. I'm going to do that real quick. Okay guys, I'm gonna go ahead and flip the camera back on and hook this side up. I just have the wires attached. I want to do this again to instill in you that the encoder boards have to be identical. I know I've said it like 10 times now, but we literally get this like 5 to 10 times a day with people hooking up PC systems because it doesn't work, and that's the reason why 9 times out of 10. So let's again go through this. Again, you have to start at the very end. Red lead. Fourth one is the B. So again, B goes on the end. Y is next. Followed by A. Followed by X. Followed by R. Followed by L. Followed by start, which is our outside button. And our select or coin, whatever you want to call it. And last again is the joystick. Only hooks up one way. If you'll notice on the cable, it has the little lines. The little lines go into the slits. And that's all there is to it. Okay, and the control panel is now wired up. The only other thing that you'll have to hook in is the USB cables, and they'll plug in at the back side right here. I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to tie this up and make it look a little more presentable. I do this every day, so I know this is right. You may not want to do this until you fully test it, but like I said, I do this every day, so I know it's right. Okay, we are all tied up. My wife does a whole lot better job than I do. But make sure again that you plug in your USB cables into the back ports before you tie everything together. I always like including the USB cables into the bundles. That way it gives it a little bit of support, since this is going to be the wire that's getting tugged on the most. That keeps everything all nice and tight and together. And we can pull these off because we don't need it no more. And that is ready to go. If you're buying the kit and using our Raspberry Pi and case, let me show you how to assemble that real quick. Get these boxes out of the way. We are quickly running out of parts. So here's your Raspberry Pi 4, and here's our ABS case. Just kind of pull it apart. All the stuff on the inside will be there. You have a fan and 4 screws. You have 4 heat sinks. And you have some little feet. So the first thing you want to do is put the fan on. Take it, and you'll want to position it like this. Make sure that the label is pointing up. That way it's sucking the heat out of the case. and set it like that. And there's a reason for it being pointed like this. I'll show you here in a second. Let me find a little screwdriver. Okay. Take your 4 little screws and set them in here. Just drop them in the hole. And then tighten them up. That's all set. And then you'll take, let's go ahead and stick on the heat sinks. So the heat sinks, they will go here, 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 and here. The biggest one, this is your largest heat sink. We'll go right there. Then this is your next largest heat sink, the rectangle one. It will go right here. Right there. And then your 2 little ones. These are both the same size. Set that one there. There is that one. And the last one goes right there. And there's all your heat sinks. The next thing is mount this to this board, or this plate I should say. That's your SD slot. And there's your SD slot on the board. So this is the back. Obviously in the front, only fits one way. Then in this packet, there's 4 little bitty screws. Screw those in. Again, for us old people, it's hard to see these little Phillips heads. Again, they'll screw in at the plates right there, right there, right there, and right there. This is always the hardest one for me. And there. And that is ready to go. And order to have the fan where it will work, it needs to plug in on the outside row, skip one, so you're on the number 2 and number 3 pin. This is the 2 that you want to use, and you want to plug in the red wire first. So red wire first, right there, just like so. And then roll that around and simply squeeze it together, and you are good to go. And then your SD card will load in right there. You can also put the feet on it if you want. They're not needed. I don't ever put them on there. We decided to go ahead and show you how this hooks up here on the bench versus inside the machine. We can better show you what's going on here. We also substituted the 2 4-inch speakers and amp with a simple plug and play solution with the sound bar. So let's recap again with the power. This is your EMI. This will mount on the back of the machine itself, and this plug goes to the wall. And then on your power supply, you have the 2 cables here, the pigtails out. You have your 5 volt and you have your 12 volt connections. So let's start by hooking in the 5 volt. More than likely, the only thing that's going to hook into it's probably going to be your Pi. So take the 5 volt, use the included adapter, which will give you a USB-C, and simply plug in at the Pi. And then the next thing we can plug in will be your HDMI cable. So take it and plug into this port. We always use the one closest to the power supply. It just seems to work better. I don't know why, but it just does. And then this will run to your LCD. If you're using a Arcade 1-Up, you'll have an LCD driver mounted on the back of your unit. Then you'd want to plug that in here. The next thing, we're going to get onto the 12 volt rail. Again, if you're using a Arcade 1-Up, you'll want to plug in the 12 volt to it. The kit will also come with extensions, with 2 extensions and a 3-way splitter. This will more than likely be used on your 12 volt pigtail. If your machine has a marquee that's 12 volt or anything else, LED buttons, etc., you can use this to basically plug those in. The final connection that you'll want to make will be the actual speaker bar. Take it, it'll plug into the 3.5 auxiliary port, and then hook into one of the free USB ports. The last thing that needs to hook into the USB is going to be the actual control deck. On the back side, you have 2 USB cables that go to the encoders. Take those and plug them into, I always use the blue ones on these since they're the 3.0s. So plug those in right there. And that should be all of your cables hooked up, the basic setup. We're also going to include a generic controller. This helps sometimes during the setup, and it makes it easy for me to sometimes navigate the menus. So also take your dongle in the last port and plug that one in. And you are all set. That is your basic setup. We now have the control deck set down, and we have everything plugged up just like what we've shown, and we just powered it on for the first time. The first time you boot this thing up, it's going to take a little extra time, so let it work its magic. As soon as it fully boots up, the first thing you're going to do is get a controller working. Do this one first. It's the easiest by far to navigate. So power this thing on. Push any button, and as soon as you do that, it says configure input. Hold A button, so just hold it down. Then you get into the screen right here. Once you're in this one, the first four things you're going to do is assign the button. It's A, B, X, and Y. Don't go by what's on the joystick. Do it where it shows. Like it shows A is east, so do that one. B is south. X is north. Y is west. Start. Select. Directional pad. Up, down, left, right. L1. R1. It's going to show your next is your analog up. And notice when you push that, it says it's already taken. The reason why, this isn't an analog joystick, so it sees this and this is the same. So what you need to do is skip them. To do that, hold the A button down, and just keep holding it down, and it says not defined. Let go, do it again, press it down, not defined. Do it for the next two. Then you have L2. Oops. L2. R2. L3 is going to be your center, your push down here. Push that down. And then R3, press down. Hotkey, you would usually use mode, but on this particular joystick, it doesn't let you assign mode. So what you have to do is basically skip it as well. Hold the A button down, and it says not defined. Hit OK. And then it says, would you like to use select as the hotkey? Hit A. So that way your select is your hotkey. And now this controller will work. So this is basic stuff. Now remember that on this theme here, it says like Y, X, and B. It tells you what to hit. Remember, it's not what's on the controller. This is the actual B. So this is actually B. That's A. That's X. And that's Y. The controllers are never labeled right. I don't know why. If you get an Xbox controller, they're usually labeled correctly, but you know, China. So the next thing we want to do is let's configure the two joysticks here. The next thing we want to do is map your encoders. So to do that, the first thing you want to do, let me turn this back on, is hit the start button, go into controller and Bluetooth settings, controller mapping, hit OK, hold down the A button, and on this one, again, this is how it should be labeled, is YXL and then BAR. It's very, very important that you assign those correctly. And this time you want to do it exactly as it says. So A, hit A, B, hit B, X, Y, start, select, which will be select coin, whatever you want to call it. And then you're up, down, left, right, your L1, R1, your analog, again you have nothing, hold down the B button, let it go, and just do that. You have no L2 or R2. If you were doing an 8-button setup, you would have your L2 and your R2 right here. So we're going to skip those. Skip that. No L3, no R3, no hotkey. Hit the OK button with the B, and again, use your select button as the hotkey. And then simply hit the back button. Push up, hit back button, hit the A button, and you're back at the main screen again. And from here, you can actually play the games. Let me show you one other thing. Notice that there is no sound. Depending on what image you use, sometimes you have to mess with that. The first thing to do to fix that, the easiest, and what it usually is, go into, hit your start button, go down in here to system settings, hit the B button, because again, this is going to be correct now. Like I said, start to close, B to select, and then choose with that. So your B button, and then go down to audio output, and you can try auto. Sometimes it works, so let's try that first. And then it says to go back, hit A, hit back one more time, and notice it did not work, which is common. So let's go back in here again. Let's do system settings, video, and let's do the headphone stereo out next. And there you go. Now you have sound. To adjust the volume, hit start button again. Hit start. Go into sound settings, and then here's your bar right here. You can go, if you do left, it's going down, and going up. Again, hit A button will take you backwards. And there you go. That is the basic of the basic. The one thing that I did forget to mention, whenever you're powering this thing off, don't just flip the main power to kill it. You take a chance on damaging the SD card and corrupting it. All you need to do is hit the start button, go down to quit, hit B, and do fast shutdown or shutdown. Shutdown, do you really want to shut down? Hit yes. And then that will power it off. And then actually walk behind the machine. At that point, you can power it off at the EMI, and all the power to the machine will be 100% off. And then to restart the machine, all you need to do is power it on, and the Pi will power on by itself, and everything will boot up just like normal. If you made it all the way to the end here, we do appreciate you watching the video. If you need any help, feel free to contact us through email or live chat. We're there Monday through Friday, and usually on Saturday as well, but sometimes I do take a day off. Usually 9 a.m. to about 5 or 6 p.m. Thank you.